grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We about to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I am your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do, hang out with friends, talk shit, talk shop, do drugs, get drunk, and get in all sorts of trouble, shenanigans, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do, hang out with a friend and reminisce about crazy old stories. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. Coming in all the way from New York City, Collin Chamberlin.
Thank you so much, everybody. Sit down. Sit down, please.
Quiet, please.
Yeah,
quiet.
We have a show to do. Because this isn't video, we can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
We can say things like, oh my God, I can't believe we have 1,000 people.
It's crazy, the audience that came out for this.
Yeah. Well, I do draw.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
As we were just discussing before the mics
how
went live.
well my draw is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
Thank
I'm
you for
excited
coming
to
on.
do this. Yeah, I've heard such great things about this podcast. I've had so many buddies do it, and I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, thank you for coming. Plug everything up front. Promote everything you got coming up.
Here's what we got,
Social media,
folks.
the whole thing.
Now would be the time to take out a pen and paper. If you have any social media presence, I'm on there. Instagram is at Collin_comedy. Twitter's Collin Comedy. Facebook is just Collin Chamberlin. TikTok is Collin_comedy. I post clips on there. I got a podcast called Hell Gigs. It's a fun podcast where I talk to other comics about their worst shows.
Oh, yeah. I got to ask you about your worst show. We'll get into it.
You're more than welcome. And I also have an album and a special that just came out in January. It's called Hello, It's Me. The special's on YouTube for free. You could go check it out. I think it's good. The album is on, it's actually not on Spotify anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their label took it down. But it is on iTunes and Pandora, and it's on Sirius. So if you listen to it, great. Send me a little picture. Hey, I'm listening to your album. Here's what I find the best thing to do. If you have a streaming thing like Apple Music or Pandora where you don't have to pay for it, you find the album, you turn it on, you turn your volume all the way down, and then you throw your phone across the room and go about the rest of your day. Just let it run, baby. Let it run. Hit the repeat button. Let it run for a couple hours. Get some chores done. By the time you come back, that's all we need.
One of my very close friends is an artist. He does music. Mm-hmm. And when his album, I'm going to try and be vague because I don't want him to get caught up in it. But when his album came out, he had it on like a smart TV in his living room, a smart TV in his bedroom, and on his phone, just running like different Spotify apps and stuff on loop.
Yeah. I did the same thing with mine. I just said, well, it's time to bump the numbers.
Yeah, there you go.
Juice it up a little bit. Cook the books. So that's where everything is. And as far as like dates and stuff, I post everything on Instagram. I have a website, collincomedy.com. I post dates on there. So check it all out.
Beautiful. Perfect.
Please.
Well, for the listeners, we are back at Gotham, but it is now Gotham Production Studios, no longer Gotham Podcast Studios. They've upgraded.
Yeah.
New building, new studios. Mm-hmm. This is
very nice.
This is nice, right?
They put in some walls.
Yeah.
So that's good.
We're getting there. We're moving up in the world.
Yeah.
16th floor now, not on the 10th anymore, baby.
16th floor. No, everybody knows business doesn't happen before the 14th floor.
Everybody knows that.
So if you're above 14, you're doing all right.
So tell everybody, it's first time on the podcast. Yeah. We've kind of been circling doing it, but I know you've been busy and I've been busy, so we finally got together. Tell everybody kind of about you since it's your first time on.
Yes.
So when did you start doing comedy?
I started doing comedy August, between June and August of, I've been doing it almost it'll be 9 years this August.
Okay.
So
2013?
2013. Yeah, I was in college.
Where did you go to college?
Pitt, University of Pittsburgh.
Okay, there you go.
Hail to Pitt. And so I started in
Go
college.
Boilermakers, right?
Yes, the Boilermaking
nailed it.
Pittsburgh Boilermakers. Steelers, Panthers, Penguins, Pirates. It's all one team. Every team in Pittsburgh is one team. Yeah. So
what? Let's take it all the way back.
Okay.
What drew you to comedy? Were you always funny, or did you enjoy? Because I've had people on who are like, I just like people paying attention to me. So stand-up's the easiest way to do that.
Right.
And then I've had people on like me who are like, no, I'm a psycho. Like comedy's my entire life. Like I love stand-up.
I'd like to think I'm somewhere in the middle of that,
Get
where
that
I always I always liked comedy and stuff. I remember. My dad always had comedy playing,
like stand up, or like
stand up,
shows?
yeah,
Okay.
like CDs, you know, like I know the big one we listened to. He had Jerry Seinfeld's special on DVD. We watched that. It doesn't age well, but Bill Cosby's himself, like I remember getting that when I was like 10 years old on DVD, and I thought it was the funniest thing. And then of all the things. Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
Get her done.
And Blue Collar Comedy Tour rides again. We're
There you
staples in my dad's car.
Okay.
So, you know, I listened to a lot of, and I remember like I would, you know, tell the jokes in class and stuff, but I wasn't like I'm by no means an extrovert, which I feel like a lot of comics aren't.
It's weird.
Yeah.
How introverted, even my stage presence
Right.
is like, oh, this guy is wild and crazy. And if I'm around the right people, I can let loose.
Sure.
But 90% of the time, like I'll go out to eat by myself because Savannah works at night, and I just sit in the corner of the bar and I won't talk to any.
Absolutely.
Like, headphones in, like don't bother me.
Our lives are spent alone. I mean, I every weekend that I'm away, I'm in a breakfast place by myself, or you know. If you know somebody you're working with, that's kind of nice. Like then you can maybe, but you know, a movie at noon in Michigan. Like I'm gonna do that by myself.
I do that stuff by myself in New York, and I live here.
Right. Well, hey, that's not a bad way to live.
I'm more comfortable being alone.
Yeah, I think comics have to be comfortable being alone. But yeah, so then the real bug that got me was, so my dad sort of, before I was born, he was getting into comedy himself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was like emceeing a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know? Yeah, and so, but then he stopped doing it after he had kids, and he started.
Kills the dream. You killed his dream.
Right, I did kill his dream. But then, when I was in college. I guess I was in college. I think I was like 19 at the time, and there was a comedy club that opened like 15 minutes from my house. It's not there anymore because they didn't pay their bills. But
was this? Were you living at home while you went to Pitt?
I was living at home.
Okay.
Yeah. So he started getting back into like he got some attention in Pittsburgh. He started a podcast. He started a blog.
Oh, your dad did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he started heating up.
Yeah, he was getting some attention. So the guy that booked this club would book him to MC because he's a really good like hype man. You know what I mean? Like he'd be a good like warm up guy for a TV show.
Great
or like
MC.
You know, yeah, like he doesn't tell a lot of jokes, but he's gonna come out there. How we doing? We feel good. This great show.
Is he still doing his podcast?
He still does it. Yeah.
What is it?
It's called the Jagoff Podcast. YAJAGOFF. And I hate to say it, but it is huge. It actually just got the #1 out of 40 podcasts, the top podcast in Pittsburgh. He's won a ton of awards. He's got a massive podcast.
The Jagoff podcast?
You Jagoff.
You Jagoff.
It's like a
You jack off.
Yeah, kind of like it's like calling someone like how they would say like in New York like jerk, like you're a jerk off.
Fucking jerk off,
right?
dude.
But in Pittsburgh, it'd be like you're a jagoff.
Yeah.
So that's his podcast. It's all about Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So
shouts out to Papa Chamberlain.
Papa JC, Johnny James. Johnny Chamberlain and Rachel Rennebeck, the co-host of the Jagoff podcast. Great people, great podcast. Listen to mine, listen to Brennan's, and then listen to mine, and then listen to the Jagoff podcast because we need it more.
Watch him get the biggest bump in his number.
We need it more. Do you understand me? If you're listening to this, we need the numbers more than he does. He's doing fine. All right. He has a 1-bedroom apartment in Pittsburgh. It's very affordable. Listen to our podcast first.
Hell Gigs and Ex-Drinking
Buddy. Put those on repeat and turn the volume down.
And throw your phone across the room.
So he started emceeing at this club, and I would go with him and hang out and watch. And then the guy that was booking the club, he would pay me to run the spotlight. He would give me like $20 or $25 to like run the spotlight for a show. And to me, this was like the best thing in the world because I was watching, it was like a C-level club, but you're watching people that were on last Comic Stand maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, come in and headline.
They're still professionals.
But exactly, they're road dogs. They're just road work comedians that know how to kill.
Yeah.
So I would go in there and I was totally amazed by what I saw.
Isn't it fascinating how you can see comics you've never heard, and you and I are in it, and I've been following comedy forever,
right?
And I will still go to clubs here and see comics I have never heard of,
right?
But they have a following, they're doing their thing, like you said, they're road dogs, and I'll just die. And I go, how have I never heard of this person?
I'm telling you, some of the funniest people I've ever seen, they worked the road. Maybe they lived in LA or New York for a little bit, and then they moved back to Pittsburgh. Comics that have been doing it 40 years. And I would open for them at a fire hall or a VFW or a church basement. And they kill harder than still anybody I've ever seen.
Yep.
If you put them in a room in New York, the Cellar or the Stand, they would destroy. And it just things didn't work out, whatever it is.
It's so life, the old saying, life happens.
Right.
But I've talked to plenty of people in Florida.
Right. Oh,
where
of course.
they went to New York or LA, got representation, and then once they got representation, they're like, I don't need to be here anymore. Everything's done online. Everything's virtual now.
Right, exactly.
And I'm traveling so much, I can just fly out of the Orlando airport versus JFK and pay a third
cheaper
of the rent.
And easier. Yeah, exactly.
And then they just move back.
Right. So I came up in Pittsburgh. I actually took a class to start. Yeah.
Was that before you ever did an open mic or anything?
Yep. First thing, I went to an open mic with my dad. Took me to an open mic to watch because he was sort of in the world before. It was sort of a thing of I want you to see what this really means. You know what I mean?
With the success that your dad had with the podcast and everything, this is fascinating to me. So was he? You said he emceed a lot and hosted and stuff like that. So was he aware of the struggles that comedians go through,
Absolutely.
at open mics and
Absolutely.
stuff? Okay, I didn't know if he was one of those things where he's like, I host every once in a while. This is great.
He 100%, because he had friends that stayed in comedy.
Okay, so he knew what you were getting into.
Yeah, he knew 100% what I was getting into. So I signed up for this class because it's one of those things where you're if I want to learn how to paint, I take a class.
Yeah.
If I want to learn comedy, I would take a class, right?
Yeah.
Do this class. There's a class show at the end, and I start going to open mics. And they're we're gonna present the award to the class clown, something cheesy, and I end up getting it. And I'll never forget, me and my dad and my sister are because they came to the show. And I mean, we're talking about a 5 minutes that if I had to watch right now, I wouldn't be able to make it through. You know what I mean? I would be sick, truly.
Yeah.
I remember I wore a ball cap. I don't wear a hat on stage, but I wore a ball cap, loose baggy jeans and slip-on boat shoes, essentially. I was dressed like an idiot. And I was horrible 5 minutes, but it was good enough. And we're sitting at this.
Had you been writing up to this point?
I was writing when I got into the class.
Okay, because I know some people are I wanted to do stand-up, so I wrote for 3 years.
Right,
and just notebooks of stuff.
Yeah, and I sort of always had funny ideas, I thought.
Yeah. I'm the same way. As a storyteller, that's the style of comedy. If I had to say what I did, that's what I do. So it's weird because I would love telling stories to people, and I never realized that's my voice in stand-up. So when I first started, I was trying to do all this shock jock stuff.
Right.
But I had I remember the first open mic I went to, I was I'm gonna just write down I had said I was gonna do comedy, so I had a notebook full of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was all shock jock humor and shit like that.
Yeah.
And then I did my first open mic, and then eventually you grow into what your style is, and then that's how you write. So your style begets your writing after a while.
Of course, yeah. It all becomes one.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the goal.
But I've had people on where they were they wrote for months, if not years, before they even tried an open mic.
Right.
And then there are people like you and I where it's kind of once I decided to do it, I started writing and then I did it.
Yeah, we'd have writing prompts and stuff in this class. And I know comedy classes are really... They can really be looked down on. And I do believe that you cannot teach someone to be funny.
Yeah.
You cannot teach it. But what it did was I basically paid someone to say, you are going to get on stage in this class once a week. And that broke, I felt my stage fright. You know?
Yeah.
And
that makes a lot of sense.
It forced you to write. It forced you wanted to come.
Gives you structure. So it's
gives
not
you a little
this
bit
weird...
right. And here's where open mics are, you know? So I don't regret doing it. And so I started doing, so I do this class, do this show, and I win the first prize, which they're like, we'll book you at the club or the venue eventually.
Yeah.
And it's like a year after you get your first gig. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was so excited, and I'm sitting at the Eaton Park. I'll never forget it. Eaton Park, Pittsburgh, like chain sort of diner on Ohio River Boulevard in Pittsburgh. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just like through the roof. And my dad goes, well, there's no turning back now, is there? And
This is after the show?
Yeah. And I go, there's no turning back now.
Fuck yeah.
And I mean, I still think about that all the time. Like, he knew as soon as that moment happened, he could see it because he's probably felt it, you know, of like, this is about to become his life. And so after that, I started to do mics more. Then you start to get on some bar shows. You know how it is. It's like you start to pick up a little bit, and then I was fortunate enough to meet comics that were working the road, that they take me with them, and you get, okay, you know, like, all right, then you meet a bigger comic, and then they take you with you maybe, and, you know, and then you start getting road work from clubs, and so things start to progress, and then eventually you get to a point, I think, where you go, all right, what are my decisions now? I was a regular feature at the Improv in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I headlined, you know, an off night, and I was headlining like the little shows around town.
I'm only smiling because I know where this goes.
Right. And you go, well,
time to make a move.
Time to make a move. I can either stay here and be a road comic, right? You know, work, or do I move to an LA or a New York? Or at the time I thought it was going to be Chicago.
That's where a lot of people go.
Yeah. And I decided to move. I moved with one of my best friends who was also a comic in Pittsburgh. And we moved together with another guy. And
to New York?
Mm-hmm, we moved to New York. And
how long ago was this?
This was in September of 2019.
Okay.
And
then, we were talking about this before we started.
And then for people that have a calendar nearby, if you count about 6 months or 7 months or so after September of 2019,
never forget,
you will get to the beginning of the pandemic. So I was in New York for about 6 or 7. I will not, again, these moments I feel like they're so ingrained in you. So like I moved to New York, nothing's clicking, of course. You move here, you have, like, I'm like,
I've talked about it to the listeners
I'm working
before.
the road, but it means nothing. It means nothing. But I accept the fact that I'm able to make a little bit of money, and I'm able to, like, you know, like, feel like I'm funny. You know, that
well, I was going to say that's more important.
Right.
In my opinion, that's more important is the validation of, like, I made the right decision.
Yes. It's just not clicking right now. So I go to LA. I had to go to LA for a festival that was just outside of LA. So I went early, and I end up booking like a lot of really great shows. I did like Venice Underground. I did this show called Poncho. I do like, and I
did you
had
book
to
these
call
through
in
people you knew?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did Comedy and Magic, which was like,
wow.
I called a buddy of mine who worked there, and he's like, I got your spot. And it was, I went
That's a
there.
big deal.
It was amazing. They're so nice. And it's like, I'm such a huge like Gary Shandling fan. I'm walking down the halls. I see pictures of Shandling. I know videos of Shandling with that curtain, that gold curtain,
behind
you know,
him,
and I'm sitting in the green room. They're so nice. They're taking care of everything. You know, you get a tape of your set. I'm like, this is incredible. I do that week of shows. Then I go and do this festival, and it's fun. It's just a party. And I get on a plane, and I'm coming back to New York, and I'm just like, this is right. I remember thinking I made the right decision. This was what it means to like be a comic. Like I went out of town. I had great shows. I'm excited to get back to New York and get back to work.
And how long were you in New York when this happened?
But like 7 months.
Okay,
8
so
months,
this is right before the pandemic hits. You're
and then
at this festival.
Yes. So then I come back.
So you're coming in like,
I come in
I'm
hot.
ready.
Right.
Let's fucking go.
Let's go. And COVID was just being talked about in the sense of like, there's a virus in China.
Yeah, I remember
Right?
that. I'll never forget. I was watching the news because I always have in my head this like apocalyptic scenario.
Right.
It always runs because I'm a catastrophizer. I always think it's the end of the world.
Sure.
So in my head, that's always playing. And I saw on the news, and I said, Yeah, but I always think it's the end of the world, but
Right.
it never is.
And
like
you were
Men in
right
Black. It's
this
always
time.
the end. There's always
Yeah.
something about to destroy the world.
Right.
And then I was like, but it never is. It's always overhyped. The news just tries to scare you. And then it started spreading. And I was like, no, because that's like, I'm always the one like, this is it. And then it never is. Like I studied history and political science. So the world's always ending.
Right.
It's always a war or nuke or something. And I was like, it never happens because people are too self-involved. They wouldn't want to destroy themselves. And then it kept spreading. And I was like, oh.
And you're like, is no one going to stop this? Right.
I was right. I was right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming for us. Yeah. So then, like, I mean, it literally was like a week later, I did a show on March 13th, and the next night,
The world
everything was
shut down.
canceled.
Yeah.
It was surreal. But, and then obviously here we are now. I mean,
So you stayed. So many people left.
I went back. I bounced back and forth because at the time I was dating somebody who lived in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So I was bouncing back. I had a show.
How far is that drive? I'm not.
6 hours.
Okay.
So the craziest thing was I had a show on the 13th outside of Pittsburgh, and I was going to drive. I was going to borrow my roommate's car and drive, and because I was going to come back. And I remember thinking like, I remember my mom. She works at a hospital. She called me and she's like, "You should probably maybe leave a little bit early because it might get weird. Like things might." And there were rumors that like they were going to lock the city down. And I didn't want to miss the gig, so I'm still thinking like in the terms of like I need this $250 or whatever. So I fly.
Damn, big ballin'.
To Pittsburgh, standby. With a connection I had from the airport, I had to fly through Boston to Pittsburgh, which is not the right direction.
At all.
Yeah. So, but that was the deal. I pack a suitcase. It's like one comedy shirt, a couple t-shirts, a couple pairs of underwear, and a pair of jeans, maybe a pair of gym shorts. Small suitcase. I get to my girlfriend at the time's house, spend like a night or two there, go do the show. The next day, everything shuts down, and it's like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And I ended up staying there for a little bit, then coming back to New York, and then I would be in New York for a little bit, and then I would go back to Pittsburgh, and...
So when you were in New York, because I was in Florida during everything,
Yeah.
so I was only out of work for like 2 months.
Right.
And then
yeah.
DeSantis is like, fuck that, rev it up.
Yes, exactly.
And to be honest, I don't want to get political, but a lot of the numbers were the same in cities that were fully open and then cities that were totally
Right,
locked down.
right.
I mean, obviously the populations are skewed,
Right.
but then like a lot of the numbers were still kind of like, so in the Republican South, they were
Right.
like, fuck this,
Oh, we're not
open it up.
Oh, dude, I remember at one point of the pandemic having a show in Nashville.
Yeah.
And it was packed.
I
walking down Broadway.
I got COVID in December at a huge show in Richmond Hill, Georgia.
Yeah, I believe it.
And
believe it.
then literally after that show, we went to a bunch of like smaller bar shows because we know a lot of people in Savannah and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcus Crespo, huge friend of the show, one of my best friends, him and I went to a bunch of shows in Savannah and just jumped on and did guest spots.
Yeah.
And then we got back and literally like 2 days later, it was Christmas. And I was like, I don't feel so hot.
Right,
And then
yeah,
the next
yeah,
day
yeah.
I tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, it was
This is
wild.
in December when you guys are up here, like still in like your little house prisons.
Oh, yeah. It was crazy. I mean, it really was a wild time. But I was living in one apartment. I got another apartment. And
So you were able to maintain and stay, like have a residence in New York.
yeah, I mean, I didn't do anything, really. I mean, I did a lot of Zoom stuff.
Well, because I just know there was a lot of comics who were like in a situation where they hadn't lived in New York long enough to get unemployment, or they were gig
no,
workers.
I was
couldn't-
able to get unemployment, thankfully, because I was working like a temp job before.
Okay, see, that was the thing.
And,
Was
yeah.
there were a couple people I knew who were only doing comedy stuff.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when the pandemic hit, it was a lot more difficult for them to get unemployment because they
Yeah.
didn't have like a regular job to be like, hey, this is how much I was making.
Yeah, and I kept my apartment too. I was still paying rent on my apartment. So my roommates were living there, and so when I wasn't there, I was still paying rent.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to keep a place that I could go back to.
Absolutely.
So I would, sometimes it would be like a month or or two.
It's
I
very
would-
good you did that because
Yeah.
you said a girl I was dating.
Right, exactly. Yes, exactly. So a little foreshadowing.
Hey.
But master storyteller. But but yeah, so got a new place, and and I'm here. I'm still here, and I'm still working, thank God. And
You just had an album come out.
I just had an album come out. Yeah, and it's so that was exciting. I got to record that in my hometown. Went back to Pittsburgh, did it at my home club.
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, it was very nice. Like the label I did it with, Helium Records. You know, they have a ton of comedy clubs. They can record an album at any one.
Oh, so Helium Records is the Helium Comedy Club.
Yes.
Okay.
So they had asked me to do an album. I said yes. And they were gracious enough to let me do it outside of their brand, which was really nice because, logistically and also like it made sense to do it in a club where I could have a little bit of a draw.
Yeah,
you know, in my hometown for me, and also it was really where I started doing comedy. It's really where I learned how to do comedy in that club, and it was, you know, to come home and do that. My first album was cool. If you listen to the album, you know, the first introduction, you hear the voice of God, you know, go like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Collin Chamberlin." It is my dad.
Oh,
so
that's
he
awesome.
Introduced me. Yeah.
You went from working the spotlight for him to him introducing you on your album.
So he did the voice of God for it. So it was cool. It was one of my best friends opened up for me, and it was a great experience. You learn a lot, and then what people don't tell you is that it ends and you are so depressed. You truly feel like there is no point in doing anything else when you're done because you put all this time and effort into this thing and then it's gone. It's gone until you start to hear like edits and then you're like, okay, and then we can work. But for about 3 weeks after I had recorded, I mean, almost the moment that it was over, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I thought I was going to be so excited. I thought I was going to be so relieved. And I have no idea what I would do. I was bombing on shows, just dying. I told Steve Rogers this. I said, when you're done recording, because he has an album coming out soon.
Yeah, May 6th.
Yeah, May 6th.
We here.
I said, when you're done, I said, book a vacation as quickly as you can. Get on a plane with your girlfriend and don't come back to the city for like a week. I said, because you need, and if I do another album again, you know, hopefully I do, I will not book anything. No, there's no comedy happening for a week after.
Yeah.
Because you need a moment to relax, to celebrate, to not think about what's next.
Absolutely.
Because you don't know what's next. You don't have anything. I had material that didn't make the album that I could kind of use. I wasn't excited about it. Well,
and you're not going to use the material that's on the album
because you just did it. You're also sick of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
By the time you record, you're so sick of the material. And only recently have I started to like bring stuff that I recorded back into my act because I'm like tweaking it.
Yeah.
And so then you know you have this thing of like, oh, I should have recorded that, and then you start second guessing things. So once you like, but that all being said, that like I think it's a natural part of the process, but like, yeah, I should have just went to like Myrtle Beach and played golf for like 5 days and not talked about comedy and not tried to go hang out at a show, you know? Because there's also a thing where you're through the roof. You're like, you feel so important. You just recorded an album. People are coming to see you record your album. It's a big deal, you know? Like the paper in Pittsburgh's writing stuff and you're doing radio. And then you come back to this godforsaken city and you're standing outside of a bar show trying to figure out who to send a tape to.
Yeah.
You know, and you're
trying
like,
to grab 5-minute guest spots at a bar show.
So you're like, well, what? It's a total
what is it all
juxtaposition.
for?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I talked about it here. I was, we had Josh Adam Myers on the show, and we're hanging out, and he's showing me, like, you know, he's like, can you believe this? And he showed me something on his phone. He was texting with another comic, and I looked at the name, and I was like, that's a huge fucking comic. Mm-hmm. And like we were just joking around, and then I literally went to an open mic and bombed, and then went to my serving job. And I go, what the fuck is my life?
I know. I mean, I'm not saying anybody that knows me knows I'm not one to like toot my own horn. But last week, I had a show at Caroline's. Like my posters up outside of the club in Times Square. My name's on the green room. It's like the coolest thing in the world. That was Tuesday. On Thursday, I was in a brewery in Connecticut doing comedy for a small audience. In the room next to me, I could see, because the plexiglass windows were there, was a more well-attended cornhole tournament. People throwing, if you don't know what cornhole is, it's where they throw bags of rice into boards with bags of corn. Is that what's in there?
Yeah,
I thought it was right. Oh, I didn't know that's how I got it. Bags of corn. They throw basically bean bags, little bean bags, corn bags into a board with a hole in it. And that sold better than the show. And I remember thinking, I texted a friend of mine, a comic, and she goes, how was the show? I said, on Tuesday, my dad took a picture in front of my poster in Times Square. Today, I am selling less tickets than the cornhole tournament actively going on next to me. So between every joke, it's just like, tum, 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 like someone just kicking like a bass drum because the bags are hitting the board. And you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Right, yeah.
I do wake up once a week and go, I wish I loved numbers. I wish I loved insurance or accounting.
I wish,
more than this.
It's so funny you say that. I wish so often I'll talk to my twin sister who has a family and owns a home. And like her family is her whole life.
Right.
Like she got into shape after she had her kids and like she like went down this whole path, like doing fitness and being a mom. And like that's her whole world.
Yeah.
I'm so envious of that because in my head, and I don't know if this is similar for you, I know it is for a lot of comics, but in my head, it's like, no, this is what I have to do. And it's so heartbreaking at times and so shitty. But then there are times where I remember when I had my going away show at Rain Dogs, and I had like, and it's a small room, but there was like 100 people there.
Yeah.
Give or take. Chris Buck is going to text me, but like there was 50 people there.
Right, yeah.
But I remember the stage was like shaking when I went on.
Right.
Because it was so packed.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, there's nothing in the world. There's no bonus check. There's no birthday. There's nothing in the world that will compare to this.
Yeah. I mean, anybody that's worked a job outside of comedy knows how much they don't like it. Like, I worked desk jobs and temp jobs and everything, especially when I first moved here. And, I look at, and God bless my friends that work the 9 to 5 and make it work, and they have a great Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like I'm happy for them. They make a better living than I do.
Yeah,
you know what
sure.
I mean? They're more comfortable in their life. But I think about like if I had to go to an office for 8 hours every day, and that was just every day of my life, I would walk in with a machete. Like I swear to God, I would end up on the news. I would end up on the news and they would go, put them down. Come home, please. Just put it down and we could figure this all out.
It's like that old Dan Cook joke. Walks into the work with a shotgun, and when he gets to my office, he's going to be like, shh, thanks for the candy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I would have spared whoever was like, always had treats, But I really don't think I would have survived that my whole life. But yeah, it's also like if you're a comic, you are.
Well, it's tough.
Yeah.
If it was easy, it would just be the way. Everyone would be in show business.
And then you do it for long enough, and you're just like, well, I don't have any other marketable skills.
Yeah, I'm funny. This is what I do.
I can like put captions on a video, but what
boom. Well, TikTok does it for you now.
Right,
you just have to go in and edit a little bit.
Yeah. So
I wanted to bring it back. So you were talking about growing up in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
That's where you spent most of your life?
Yes.
Okay.
All my life in Pittsburgh.
When did you because you're a drinker. You like to drink.
I've been my mom's side my mom's half Italian and half like Irish German. And my dad's side is English Irish.
Okay.
So
heavy drinkers.
It's a part of
the fabric of your being.
The fabric and the culture. You know what I mean? I not that any of them were always like drunk, but like every party there's a drink, and every occasion there's some sort of drink or wine or something.
So it was more because growing up in my house, because we're Eastern European for the most part, so it was very much like. Not like a glass of wine. Like a lot of times it's like, we're celebrating shots.
Sure, right.
Oh, something else, shot. Like, here we go,
Yeah.
So in your family, because you sent me some stories, which I really do appreciate. And
Yeah.
your dad, speaking of your jagoff,
Right.
he is a constant in some of these.
Yeah.
But I wanted to. So you put stealing church wine on here.
Yes.
This is when you were super young.
I was in about 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Is that the first time you ever drank?
Probably, yeah. So I went to Catholic school growing up, and I from like preschool to 8th grade, and you get to a point, and it was very small school. I mean, like walking distance from my house. 5 girls, 5 boys in my 8th grade class.
What?
Yeah, like super small. But like in 6th, probably 6th grade is when it started. Like 6th grade, that you go to mass on Fridays, and the students would serve mass. The students would be the altar boys and stuff. And this isn't one of those stories, but I promise. But so I was an altar boy, and my friends were altar boys. And I think the problem is we got to change the boy. You know what I mean? Sometimes people say altar server. It's not as good, but it does sound better than altar boy.
Yeah.
If we lose the boy, we can fix this whole
Altar
thing.
person?
Altar person. I was an altar person. And and so, but when you get to like a certain grade, you have to then start like training the younger altar people. Like 3rd and 4th grade is when you could start to do it, and learn how to do it. So I would get out of class to go do that because I'd been doing it for a while and stuff, and my friends had been doing it for a while. You get paid like you do a funeral or a wedding. They give you an envelope with like $10 in it, and you'd be like, "I'm rich. If I do 3 funerals a week, that's $30. I've never seen this kind of money." Right?
Especially when you're that young, because it's like,
Absolutely.
especially because you're only a few years younger than me, and candy back then's like $1 for like a king size Snickers.
Or, you're like if you had $10 at a school cafeteria.
Oh, you're
the
king.
damage that you could do. I could drink 100 cartons of iced tea.
Yeah.
If I wanted to.
That we had chicken tender baskets. They were like $3.25 with fries and the whole deal.
Right. Yeah. You could get the
that
Dunkers.
pizza, a couple cookies.
Yeah, exactly. You were a king. So I did a lot of altar serving, and it was eventually my turn to sort of like train the new people, and you get out of class for it. So what you would, the great thing, and it's pretty apparent, the great thing, but also the bad thing about Catholic school is there is little to no real supervision.
Yeah.
Because there really aren't, they operate outside of the
laws of
rules
man.
of school, of like a government school. So I would just be given keys to the sacristy, which is where like they keep like the robes, the wine, the candles, everything. It's like the storage place for a church. I would be given the keys. Me and my friend would go. We'd unlock it. The younger students would come. We'd show them how to like light the candles. Where to get the books, and here's where you do this. This is where you do this. This is where you stand here. And then they would leave, and we would clean up. But after they would leave, we would sit in the sacristy and drink church wine.
Yeah.
And play with matches.
Get some.
And like I remember, like, being in 6th and 7th grade, thinking this was like the best thing in the world, like drinking little Dixie cups of church wine, one after another, and playing with matches. I mean, it's crazy that there were no adults around, and no one. I remember once someone came in and said, "It smells like smoke in here," and I go, "We just blew out the candles," and they go, "Okay." And then they left. And that was it. That's all they said. They did not question anything.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't say a single word. So, yeah.
So, were you getting drunk off this church wine?
I mean, that's probably such low alcohol.
Yeah.
But, like, in your head, you're like, I'm buzzed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, as
Absolutely.
a 6th grader, I'm like, I'm feeling it.
fucked.
Yeah, right. Like, and it was just, I don't know. To me, it was the most fun thing to do.
Well, and it's true. I mean, you fast forward 20 years, it's still a super fun thing to do. Hang out with your friends like
Right.
we do on the show.
Right.
And then, back when I was drinking, just to hang out with a few people and just drink
Yeah.
and sit around and talk shit.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
So doing it in 6th grade, or you're doing it when you're 32, it's still fun.
Yeah. So we're just like sitting there and we're like, can you believe Mr. Walker said that this is that? What an idiot. And like you're just shooting the breeze,
Yeah.
having a couple little cups of wine.
Just a little cups of wine.
Little
Not a big
taste
deal.
here and there, playing with matches. and then you go back to class.
Yeah.
And it was just, to me, and to the point, did get to the point where I was offering to like help more because to get out of class and go do it. And like I remember my teachers being like, "Are you ever gonna be in class?" I was like, "Oh, we got a thing,
starting to develop.
Like we got a funeral, or we got
Collin's
this,
helping too
or
much.
that." Colin was so helpful. I was so helpful to anybody that needed help, like getting into the sacristy.
As long as you need me to
anything.
close up the sacristy, I'm here.
I'm your guy.
I'm your guy.
Yeah.
So did you from there, were you like a big drinker in high school and stuff? Did you go to public high school?
I went to public high school, which was quite a transition.
Going from 10 people in the class
to 250 in my 9th grade class. Yeah. So, I drank a little bit in high school, nothing crazy. The norm, like parties and stuff like that.
It's always funny when people come on and say the norm, because I was bullied and a big like outcast in high school. My sisters and my older brother were incredibly popular, but I just didn't have that. So I didn't really start drinking until after high school. So it's always funny to me when people are like, parties in high school. And I'm like, well, no, I have no idea.
By parties, I mean 6 guys sitting around a basement. One of them has a guitar. Someone's playing Mario Party. And you're like, my dad's got beer, But I remember the big thing in our high school. Well, see, the thing with our high school was I went to a high school that was known as Heroin High.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, big drug problem. And I remember like the school getting locked down on many occasions for drug searches and stuff. I never partook. But
you've never done heroin?
Never did heroin.
I've had so many different kinds of people on this podcast. I said it to you in like a jokey way, but that's been a serious conversation on the show.
Yeah, I believe that. Knowing just people in this business.
Yeah.
But I remember the big thing when I was in high school was people would get like bottles of Dr. Pepper and dump half of it out and then fill it with Bacardi 151.
Yeah.
151 and Dr. Pepper and you would just pass the bottle around the lunch table or something. People would come with like a couple bottles of it in there.
Fuck yeah.
Or
this was in school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else was big was like any kind of just cheap vodka with a Gatorade chaser.
Yeah. So that's what I did in my worst alcoholism. That's what I did was I would get Gatorade powder.
Yeah.
And then I'd get a water bottle, dump half the water bottle out, put the powder in there, and then fill it half with vodka, and then just shake it up. And I was like, I can't get dehydrated and hungover if I'm constantly drinking Gatorade.
I thought that once in my life too, until I drank about half a bottle of Kettle One with blue Gatorade. And thought I was going to have to kill myself the next day. I thought I'll never feel good again, and it would be easier to die than to do this. So I also thought that at one point that if I just drank enough Gatorade, it would be fine and not make my vomit blue.
Well, it's one of those things because they're like Gatorade hydrates you, Gatorade, and then everyone's always like, "Oh, you're hungover." Because you're dehydrated,
right?
So it's
and what's the first thing you do when you get when you're hungover? You get like a Gatorade.
Yeah, exactly.
A Gatorade and like a bite to eat. It's like, oh, I need. And then so I just thought that was how it was. But I didn't really turn it on until college.
But you were living at home in college.
Yeah, I was living at home.
Tell the listeners how that worked out.
I was living at home, and I would go. So I went to Pitt. So here's I did not get into the main campus of the University of Pittsburgh on first try. I blame that my application was late, and they might blame that I was not the ideal candidate to get into the main campus. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter now. But I got into the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, which is a very, as they told us, it's the same school. It's the same degree.
So it's still, it's still a Boilermaker. Yeah.
Right. It's a branch. We see in Pitt Johnstown, so Pitt is all cats, right? So Pitt Panthers is the main campus. Pitt Johnstown, you're the Mountain Cats. Now, Mountain Cat is not as cool.
Pitt Panthers. I thought it was the Boilermakers.
No, I was just kidding with you. Yeah, it's the University of Pitt Panthers.
Who are the Boilermakers? Oh, that's Purdue.
Purdue. I did not go to Purdue.
God, you had me.
Yeah.
I thought I nailed
I was just
that.
running with it.
You yes-anded me to the point where I believed it.
I'm all in on saying yes to the
Pittsburgh
dress.
Panthers.
Pittsburgh Panthers. So I was a Pitt Johnstown Mountain Cat my first year and a half.
This
and that
is going
was
to bother me, that I fucked that up.
We can edit it in post. Rachel, take that out now. But I'm just kidding.
She's not here.
She left. She's at a Starbucks right now. She's getting a venti iced latte, and we're on our own. But yeah, I went to Pitt Johnstown. It was the first time I had ever lived outside of
Mountain
home.
Cats.
The mountain cat. Mountain Cat or Mountain Cat, I think. So we were.
So you were living outside of.
It was the first time I lived outside of home for about a year and a half.
FAU did the same thing. That's where I went. Go out.
Yeah.
Whoa. But they had
Nice.
like the Jupiter campus, which was the honors school. Then they were known for ocean marine biology. So they had like other campuses scattered throughout the coast and stuff.
Right.
But Boca was the main campus.
Yeah.
And I always thought like when people would be like, yeah, I went to FAU too. Well, I went to FAU like. Jupiter or whatever.
Right.
I'd always be like, fucking, you didn't go to FAU then.
Right.
Like if you're not on the campus
right.
in Boca, 7770
way.
Glades Road, Boca Raton,
I felt
you didn't fucking
the
go to
same
FAU.
way. When I was at Johnstown, I was like, I want to do everything I can to get to the main campus. So for my first year and a half of college, I went to Pitt Johnstown. I lived with two of my best friends from high school. And
Off campus or
on campus in a dorm.
All right. So
but our one roommate, his cousin went to school there, and he was 22.
God, that's it. Key to the city.
Key to the city. It is obscene.
So he didn't want to go to the main campus, the brother. He was fine being at Johnstown.
I guess he would have been fine. Yeah.
22, you're about to graduate.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was his last year, I think. So we would just, give him whatever money we could get and
whatever you could get.
Bring back as much as you can get, you know, like, so we were drinking, like, we would get like, you get like a 36 pack of like Natty Ice. Rolling Rock beer was always on sale. And at St. Patrick's Day, you get free T-shirts, free Rolling Rock T-shirts. So I had a Rolling Rock T-shirt for a while. We get a 36 pack, and our one roommate did not drink, so it was just me and this other guy.
Nerd.
We would, Now he's the biggest lush that I know. Shout out Doug McGlynn, a good Irish Pittsburgher that will drink anybody under the table, I believe. But
shouts out Doug.
Yeah, to the whole McGlynn family. God bless you. But
no one else will.
Yeah, right. So we would get a 36 pack of beer, and then we would get a handle of either like
the plastic vodka handle.
Yeah, like Vlad.
Mm-hmm.
It was big, Vladimir vodka, and then we switched to Calico Jack rum, which is essentially just sugar water. It was so gross and bad for you, but we would get the biggest bottle of Calico Jack rum I've ever seen in my life, and we would mix that with root beer and Mountain Dew, and that would be Friday, Saturday.
Can I tell you something?
Huh?
People make fun of me all the time when I was in college because I would mix Captain and then later Sailor Jerry with Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And people were like, that's fucking disgusting.
No.
And I was like, no, it's good.
It's good.
Thank you.
Calico Jack rum with some Mountain Dew or root beer is very good.
Code Red Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
With a little
it's
Captain.
very, very good. And we would fill the water bottles up. I mean, we were like we were going to war. Like we would pack up these bags. We'd never see our dorm again.
Yeah.
Because we go to a buddy's house that had like a lodge or whatever they call it, like a bigger dorm. They lived with a bunch of other people for like a party. And we would we'd have some drinks at the thing, and then you load up the bags and you go to war. And then you're just out and about. And dude, it is crazy the things that we got into, like thinking like, I'll never forget, we were out at this party. And the funny thing is, my dad, I remember I came home my first semester and he goes, have you been to any parties and stuff? I said, not really. And he goes, he's like, Collin, he's like, you can tell me if you drink. He's like, I don't care if you have a couple beers. And that's when I knew I couldn't tell him. I actually couldn't tell him because he said you could have a couple beers. We were drinking like the next day we were going to have to be in the front lines at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Like we were drinking so much. So
Wanted to die because it was easier.
right. Yes. So we this one time we're at our buddies and he lives with like 8 other guys. And there was this guy, Dave, who was a bit of a loose cannon. And our buddy Doug, who's not drinking, he would always DD if we wanted to go somewhere. So we all are loaded. We get into Dave's car and we go to McDonald's or something, and we just, we come in and we just get an obscene amount of food and it's disgusting. And we get back into Dave's car and Dave's in the back seat and he goes, Doug, he goes, reach under the front seat and hand me the box under the front seat. And Doug's like reaching under, he's trying to drive. He's like, what is, he's like, reach under the front seat and give me the box that's in the front. Give me the box, Doug. Give me the box. And Doug's like reaching. He's like, what is this? And Dave goes, it's my handgun.
Holy
And we're like,
shit.
oh no. So like, we're all like, Doug, don't give him the box. Don't give him the box. So like, we pull up on campus. Doug parks the car. Dave's like, I got to get my gun. We're like, no, dude, do not grab don't get your gun. Also, why do you have a gun on campus? You know what I mean? Like you're parked on campus. So we get out of the car. Dave's like, we like get him into his apartment. We're like, do not let him go to his car. Right?
Yeah.
Please. We got the
Why
hell
does he
out
want
of
it
there.
so bad?
I don't know. He was insane. This guy was insane. Same guy.
Loose cannon.
Also pulled a knife on Doug at a party. We're all standing around, and they were friendly enough. And we're all standing around with this guy's big, house, multi-level dorm or whatever it is, and we're all having a good time. And next thing you know, it just sort of gets kind of quiet, and we just see Doug. His back's up against the wall. He's kind of like half smiling, and this guy Dave has a knife to like Doug's chest, like pressed up against Doug's chest. And Doug's like, "Hey, Dave!" Like we're like, "Dave,
Calm down,
like
Dave.
calm down." He's like, he thinks he's funny. He thinks he's so funny. Doug, you think you're funny? And Doug's like, I don't know, it might be funny. I don't know if I'm funny. And we're like, and this guy's a big dude, and we're like, oh my God, we cannot, there's no way we're going to get to him without someone getting cut. You know what I mean? Someone getting hurt. So Dave just goes, I don't know, he goes, Doug funny, huh? Doug funny. And like starts to laugh, and then Doug starts to laugh. And it was like, and then we all just like, ha, 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 ha. Like, we're all like laughing. And then we're all laughing. And he's just like, Doug, funny. And then he just like walks away.
Yeah.
And we're like, what is going? Like, we have to stop hanging out here.
So I like that you told that story about Dave, because that's kind of, I never thought about it, but I guess that's how I was perceived in college, was being the loose unit.
Sure.
The loose cannon.
Yeah.
I got into a fight. This is my big closing story whenever I do shows.
Yeah.
My big my machine story.
Right.
But I got into a fight with a fellow teammate and pulled a knife, and that's how I got this scar going down my face. I cut my own face open.
Really?
Like trying to make a point. And the story's a lot funnier, but it's just, I never thought like I hang out, now that I'm sober, I'll hang out around people who drink, and I'm like, God, that guy's a fucking moron. And
right.
Then, the more I think about it, the further I get away from my last drunk, I'm like, oh, I was the fucking moron. I was the Dave.
Of course. We all do that, though. We're all so quick to judge anybody that like if somebody that quits smoking, they look at someone with a cigarette and they're like, you're killing yourself. It's like, your jacket still smells like smoke. Like,
Mike Carano, very good friend of the show, been on before, was the manager of the Improv for like 30 years out in California. Great guy. Does all sorts, dabbles in all sorts of things. Has a great podcast with Anderson and Tyler called The After Disaster. Shout out to them. But when he first got sober, he's going on about 10 years sober. When he first got sober, it's so funny. He was talking about this on their podcast. He would drive by the liquor store, like literally weeks after being sober, and be like, fucking losers, can't handle life.
That's so funny.
And he was like an alcoholic.
Right. And you were like, you were there not like minutes ago. We could count the hours, that you were last there.
So it's interesting you bring up that whole thing with Dave, because it's like, oh yeah, like everyone, that's the whole premise of the show.
Right.
Was everyone I would talk to about my crazy stories always had their crazy stories. So it's like, you can't be quick to judge.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing is that I'm not a violent drunk by any means, But I do feel like I am a loyal drunk.
Yeah.
Where
If I
like
get
whatever
backed
my
into a corner,
friends are doing, I'm doing it too.
Yeah.
You know, if something's going down, I guess we're all going down together. That kind of thing. You know, and I've been
want to have a couple of beers.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I'm never one to like I don't think start trouble. I certainly have friends that are.
But if they're starting it, you're going to be in there with
I'm
them.
just like, well, I guess, you know, and it was like, I don't know, like I played hockey growing up, and like when I played hockey later, like I played hockey like through college. On,
you played?
Yeah, like not like D1 or anything.
Oh,
like
I thought you played at Pitt.
No, I did not play.
I was going to say, normally they don't send those kids to the sub-universities.
No, well, Pitt did not have a pro ice hockey program. They had like a club team. But I played I was working at another college while I was in college, and they had like hockey programs and stuff. But I played like in the men's league and stuff like that. And
ice hockey?
Yeah, and we had a really good team. And roller hockey. We had a really good team because it was all people that like played in high school, and then it was all people from like the college that maybe was at Robert Morris University. So they would get people that like worked for the college or maybe were a year out of the program, and they would come and play. So we had a really good team, and like the coach of the team would play and stuff. But they were all like, you know, big beer drinkers. So like before and after every game, there was always a couple beers, and then after you're like hanging out and crack a couple beers. But like because of that, everybody's like wants to like kill our team because we're like they were so good. You know? I mean, I wasn't that good.
So you're
like,
having a couple beers, then beating the snot out of people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't that good. I could hold my own, but I was like a third line, fourth line player on a team where guys that like fresh out of like playing college hockey are now coming, having like a couple Miller Lights and then going and like wanting to fight a plumber.
Yeah.
You know, like so people would be furious with us. And there were just so many times where we were like, I'd be like talking to a buddy and be like, oh my God, like Derek is going to fight tonight. Like, and we're all going to just get dragged into it. Like, let's just try to get out of this with like not getting punched. Can we all just try not to get punched?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, and you start to think you're like I have class tomorrow or I have to work tomorrow after school.
I don't want to go
and
on with
I
the
don't
black
want
eye.
to have to fight someone. It's 11:30 at night. I don't want to have to fight this person. But sure enough, like one of the players on our team would like start something with somebody, and then it was just like, okay, everybody grab somebody, you know, and they just like wrestle them to the ground or whatever, and like.
So you've been in some fights.
I mean, I've been in enough like scrums and stuff, and I've been through comedy. I've been closer to fighting actual fights than I've ever had in my life.
Really?
Yes.
Is that because hecklers, or are you talking about other comedians?
Hecklers, yeah, there are times where I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to fight this person. Like, I've had hecklers get up and, like, kind of approach the stage. I'm like, well, I guess we're going to fight.
Yeah.
I've had a heckler pull a
Love
knife
that
on
you're
me.
not even worried about it.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, I guess this is
I mean,
happening.
it's like, but you're also in that moment, you're so filled with, like, blind anger.
Yeah.
That, like, I'm so mad that you're interrupting that, like,
There are times where I'll be in the middle of a story, like a dark story,
Right.
and then someone will heckle, and I go, have you lost your fucking mind?
Right, yeah.
Like, I'm talking about my 8th arrest.
Right.
Or like
I'll
my
kill you.
3rd arrest
You know
for
what I mean?
assault. Like, what are you doing?
Right, exactly.
I don't want to skip over it because I know there's people right now screaming at their phones. Like, he just said he got a knife pulled on him. What was that?
Oh, yeah. I was at an open mic in Pittsburgh, and I wasn't very...
Was this when you first started?
Mm-hmm, yeah, I was probably maybe a year in, if that. And I was not doing well. And I was like doing crowd work, and it wasn't good crowd work, and I'm like making fun of this guy and his girlfriend. They're like sitting in the front row because they're talking, and it's an open mic.
So there's like an audience at the open mic?
Yeah, but I was just so dumb to think like, well, why? Like they should be paying attention, you know? What I mean? It's like it's an open mic.
Yeah.
I'm standing in front of a beer cooler and TVs are on. In hindsight, I should have just
let it go.
But I'm like,
Fuck
I
you.
said something to them, and then I look over, and the guy's just sitting at the table, holding a knife, like his hand is resting on the like bar stool table or whatever, bar table. And I look at the manager, and I'm like, I go, Joe, he's got a knife. And then he just like shrugs. He's like, oh, what are you gonna do? And like I look at the host, and the host is like kind of gives me the shrug, and I'm like, okay, I guess like I'll finish that joke and then I'll leave. So like I told the end of my joke I was in the middle of, and got off stage and just sat in the back of the room until that guy left.
God, were you terrified?
I was more just like, it just seems surreal.
Yeah.
You know, of like, was he going to stab me? What was his plan? I would have liked to have talked to him after. I'd like to talk to him now.
Yeah. Figure out. Yeah, because that's the other thing, too, and that's the situation I found myself in was when I pulled the knife on my teammate.
Sure.
I was like, well, I'm not. Luckily, and I say this in the bit, but luckily my teammates, improv group, ended with the best of them. And they grabbed me and they go, Taz, calm down. Because in the moment, thinking back on it, it's like, well, I wasn't going to stab him.
Right, yeah.
But it's like I had the knife. Everyone's holding me back, so I had to do something.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I'd be curious to know.
I'd like to find that guy and see what if he even remembers it.
Yeah.
You know, but what were his intentions? Were you going to kill an overweight open micer? Were you prepared to take a young
in front of a room full of witnesses?
You know what I mean? So that was pretty wild. And I've had people be like bad. You know, if I was running a show, like people be like drunk and stuff and like shout out. And I've asked them like, you know, please be quiet, please. And then like they get real loud and then we're like screaming. We're nose to nose. We're yelling. And I'm just like, I'm not somebody. I don't have a ton of patience anymore, and I don't have a ton of patience for like I think comedy makes you it drains whatever like patience you had for like incompetence and rudeness. You know, like I can't.
Same thing with serving. I've discovered that waiting tables.
It's a service industry job. You know what I mean? And I think comedy is like service industry in the sense of like. You're there to provide something. Yeah. You know?
Well, and it's the same thing. Like when I first started waiting tables when I was 18, I'd go to restaurants and be like, oh, I'm a server too. Like I totally get it. And now that I've been doing it for almost 20 years, like when I go to a restaurant and shit gets fucked up, I go, like, I have no patience for it. I'm like, you should have fucking put the order in sooner.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you should know better.
Yeah. So I get upset with people when they continually act out and like the club doesn't intervene, or like if it's a show that I'm producing, like then I get upset, and I get upset with people when they're just it's just so rude, like when it comes down to it, of like
especially if you pay tickets to go watch comedy and then you're gonna talk
and
the
you're
whole
like
time.
You're ruining other people's nights. Like, you know, I always be like, do you have any idea like what this takes? Like I posted a video on Instagram last week of like me flipping out on this lady, like, and I'm not on stage, I'm pretty clean. I'm not really an aggressive comic, but like I don't like it when like.
So you get up there and people think maybe they get the impression that you're softer.
I think people get the impression I'm conversational.
Yeah,
I'm very conversational, and I think people get the impression that
it's an interactive
they
show.
Can shout out a little bit. I don't do a ton of crowd work, but I am conversational. And so, like for example, this lady like just kept interrupting, and I just lost it. I was just like. I was talking about, like I said, I live in New York or something like that. She's like, you're from New York? I go, yeah. She's like, me too. I was like, I'm from New York, and I drove here. I drove to Ohio. Do you know how long that drive? And I just broke everything down. I was like, tomorrow I have to get my car. I have to drive this many hours, and I have to pay this much in gas. I have to pay this much in tolls, and I have to eat a Slim Jim sandwich at a rest stop, and I have to, you know, hold my pee so I can make good time, and I have to like not get to my bed until, and I'm just like, so you have to be quiet. Like you have to be quiet because it took everything in me to get here. Like, and I am here.
Fucking ruining
and
it.
now you're ruining it. You're ruining it for me, and you're ruining it for
Did
people
she shut
around
up?
you. She did shut up after that, but it was, you know, then you just have to be like, go back into like, so anyway, my sister watches some crazy movies, you know, like, but she did come up to me after, her and her friends, and she was like, didn't even phase her. She's like, I'm from Long Island.
Oh my God. So she just kept bringing it up?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then her friend came up to me. She's like, we weren't trying to bother you. We were just having fun. And I said, well, as long as you had fun, that's all that matters, isn't it? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like,
they're going to be like, of course.
Yeah, right. I'll see you later. Yeah, so
we have time. I want to do one more of these stories.
Yeah, please.
We kind of got off on a tangent about college, but that's good. That's what I love about the show is I always get a list, and then half the time, we go off stuff that's not even on the list.
You do a great job of like, it's such a free show. It's such a fun thing to do.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I appreciate that. Do you want to do your dad's Christmas party or blacking out in Cincinnati? We've got about 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll do my dad's Christmas party.
All right.
So this is this past year.
So this was recent.
This is recent. This is December.
Yeah.
This is a few months ago. So this past, my dad's got this podcast and his blog and everything, and him and his business partner, they work. I give them, as much as I joke around about like the silliness of like my dad having a podcast, like they work so hard. They work. I mean, I work as hard as I feel like I need to. They work so hard to create this company. You know, it's so like I give them all the credit in the world. And they had this Christmas party for their employees and their families and stuff. So, and one of my best friends, who's a comic, also does some work for my dad.
Okay.
So he's there, and my sister's there, and she's like fresh off of having like a baby, first night out. Her boyfriend's there. I'm there, obviously. My dad's there. My dad's business partner, her husband's there, who's a big partier. Her kids are there. So there's like 20 some people at this very nice back room of like like the Brazilian steakhouses where they come out, and like a very nice Brazilian steakhouse in Pittsburgh, back room, open bar thing, right? So I get there a little late, and I sit down, and the waiter comes over and goes, "What are you drinking?" I go, "Jameson on the rocks." He goes, "Well, you have to catch up, so I'll get you a double." I said, "My man, that's what I'm talking about."
That's service.
Also on the table are like 12 bottles of red wine, okay? So the first thing you do is you pour yourself a glass of wine because you're here, and it's like, oh, let me get you a glass of wine. So I get I have a glass of red wine. I have a double Jameson coming shortly. And I am drinking, and we're eating, and everyone's being merry and whatnot. And they just keep bringing drinks out. They just keep whatever you had that you just take another. So I'm just drinking double Jamesons, not realizing that the first Jameson that I had was a double, and he's just bringing me double Jamesons.
Because
in my other hand is constantly a glass of red wine. You know what I mean? So when I'm going to cleanse my palate with is red wine. So then they have karaoke in the back of the room, right? But they get a karaoke machine. Everybody's gonna sing, and it's gonna be fun. So we do this karaoke, and I'm feeling it. And I'm singing, and again, one of my best friends is there. He's also a comic. I'm like, this is so fun. We're singing. He's drinking. My sister's hammered because this is the first time she's been out in a long time. I'm like, this is great. Hannah's here. We're all getting, we're going to live forever.
Yeah.
That kind of. So the night, then they go, okay, like last call. And they bring us like as many drinks as they can like justify. So everyone's just like downing drinks, all the bottles of wine were like getting the last drop out. I drove to the party, but did not. I think I left my car there, or I don't know how actually my car left that party, but I didn't take it. I get in my sister's boyfriend's truck, and I'm on the phone with my mom. I don't know how I get on the phone with my mom, but she's like, "Where's Ray? Where is Ray? Is Ray going to drive you somewhere?" I go, "Ray left. Ray's gone." Ray was in the seat in front of me. And I was so already like blacked out. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know we were going. We end up at this little bar that Ray and I used to run shows in Pittsburgh. We used to run comedy shows there. And so the owner knows us. The owner knows my dad. We're in the basement. And they're like, it's like, again, he's like, whatever you guys want. I'm happy you guys are here. And we're just like crushing beers and stuff. And I don't really remember any of it except for this point where there's a microphone and there's a piano on stage because it's like a music place, jazz club kind of thing. And I could play the piano well enough. Sober. So my dad or his business partner goes, "You guys got to go up there and play something."
Oh, no.
I'm like, okay. And so my buddy Ray, he's like, he's a showman. So he's like, "I'll sing something." And he's like, I was like, "What do you want to play?" He goes, "How about Elton John?" I was like, okay. I sit down at the piano, and I have like the notes or chords on the phone. And I don't know what I played, but I know it wasn't Elton John. But I know that he was singing Elton John's Your Song, and I was just playing a completely different song. And it must have been so bad. God. But in my head, I just remembered thinking like, okay, like keep it together, like just don't fall over. And that's kind of where the night ended for me of where I really left. So the end of the night goes with somebody drove me back to my dad's, and I got in the back seat of their car like an Uber instead of in the front, and because I must have thought I called an Uber. I get back to my dad's, and I apparently crawled from the car into his house, into his apartment, and then from the entry into his apartment to the bathroom, where I just vomited all night. And I woke up the next morning, like, still in, like, I think still in, like, a sport coat. And it was just, like, I had no idea what happened. Like, I mean, it was like my whole night after we left and you're like,
after you left the steakhouse,
right,
was just
and you're
blank.
like, oh my God, not only was I that drunk, but I did that in front of 20 of my dad's employees and their families. You know what I mean?
Get
and like
some.
my sister's hit, you know, so then, and the next day is Christmas Eve. So I go to my mom's the next day and she's like, are you sick? Do you have COVID? Are you sick? Like, you don't look well. I'm like, I'm
Alcohol poisoning, Mom.
I'm literally going to die. Like, I'm so sick right now.
That's
I was like, I
hilarious.
don't have COVID. It was maybe the drunkest I've been since then in a long time.
Beautiful.
And, yeah. So
Perfect. Well, that's a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Plug everything
yeah.
one more time.
Collin_comedy on the gram and on TikTok. That's all that matters. And Twitter is Collin Comedy. And my special, Hello, It's Me. It's on YouTube. The album's on iTunes. Check it out. Stream it. Watch it. Tell somebody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Of course, Brennan T. Comedy, at Brennan T. Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. Subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/BrennanTassif, and we'll talk to y'all next week.